Hey everyone, welcome back to Sports in the Mitten. It is Sunday night, August 27th. My name is Thomas Beindit. Here with Adam Biggers to chat about some Michigan sports stuff, Michigan State. Really a lot of topics on the docket tonight. Adam, how's it going?
Doing well, Thomas. I want to remind everybody who's watching us on our YouTube live stream on the Sports in the Mitten channel, subscribe to that. You can listen to us on Blog Talk Radio on the FanRag Sports channel, and you can catch us on iTunes as well and Google Play. So uh, those quick plugs out of the way. I'm ready for football, Thomas. I mean, this has been, all the camp availability. We've talked to a lot of guys. I mean, my general feeling, I'll start out by just saying this. My general feeling is these guys know that there's people that are doubting them in some capacity, whether it be youth, whether it be experience. But at the same time, I'm getting a really confident vibe from the Michigan Wolverines. So we're going to get into that. Jim Harbaugh's first press conference is next week. We're going to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, whether it's from the YouTube live stream, and we also have some questions from Twitter. We'll quick thoughts on Floyd and Connor. Floyd's from Grand Rapids, so we're going to talk about that really quickly. And want to wrap up the show with a little bit of Michigan State talk for the one or two people that do watch this show for Michigan State football. I have you covered. At the end of the show, I'm going to go over defensive backs, offensive line, all kinds of stuff, kind of basically what you need to know. But yeah, I guess right now, Thomas, the topic among Michigan fans is just level of anticipation. It's like you can tell there's a feeling. You can just feel it. Like people are ready for Michigan football. And I feel like the expectations, it depends who you ask. Expectations too high for this team, or do you think maybe some people are discounting them a little bit?
Well, I mean, that's always a difficult question because there's so many expectations. I mean, if you listen to Phil Steele, it sounds like Michigan's going to be one of the worst teams in the country. I'm being a little facetious there, obviously, but obviously he's talking them down. But you got other people. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the big Fox Sports college football analyst. Can't think of the name off the top of my head for some reason. But he's super high on Michigan.
Are you talking about Clay Travis?
No, not Clay
No,
Travis.
no, he's not.
College
Okay.
football analyst. He calls a lot of the games, but he's high on them. He has them winning 10 games. Complimenting Harbaugh left and right. Personally, I think this is going to be a somewhere between 9 to 11 win season. I understand there's a chance things can go off the rails anytime you have this many unknowns, you have this many question marks across the roster, which for instance, people are super confident in, Rashawn Gary, Maurice Hurst. I'm pretty confident in both of them. I think they're both going to have great seasons. But to be fair, we as fans haven't seen them in the roles that they're likely going to have this season. Now, don't get me wrong. They played a lot. And I know this is a kind of making a very nuanced argument here, but we don't know for sure how they're going to perform. We don't know for sure how their backups are going to be. There's just a lot of uncertainty around the team, but I just have a hard time believing, based on how the schedule figures, based on what we're hearing out of camp and so on, that this team is going to win 8 or fewer games. I mean, I would just be floored if that happens. So, I mean, I think they're between 9 to 11 wins. 12 wins is out the window, I think, for me. I know people will say it's possible, but if you're this young, you're going to blow a game at least. Even if this team really is better than advertised, I have a very, very difficult time believing that. But I think 9 to 11 wins is realistic. I think most of your quote-unquote reasonable projectors here will probably say 9. But me personally, I think this is a 10-win team. That's kind of how I view it. I think they're going to steal at least one of those 2 road games, either Penn State or Wisconsin. And then I think they're going to win one of either Ohio State or Florida. Obviously the Florida game being this week. But that's how I kind of see it. And I think expectations should be high. I don't think people should think there are going to be no growing pains. But I think this is going to be a pretty good season.
I started out initially with, I feel like a 9-win baseline. For me, it seems fair. if there's some problems, because I do have a couple questions, about secondary and offensive line depth. So I mean, how many injuries away would these guys be, from kind of a dire situation is what I'm looking at. So that's one of my concerns. I think, 8-4 would be worst possible scenario for Michigan, even being young. I say 9-3 because I do believe that that's doable. I do think it in some way. Florida or Ohio State got to win one of those. Get one of those, as you mentioned, at either Wisconsin or Penn State. I think they'll beat Michigan State this year. I think that the road to 9 wins isn't too difficult, assuming that they're as prepared as we think they are. And based on, my interactions with them, I would say so. And I know the Michigan fans are, shoot for the stars. And I know this is Jim Harbaugh's 3rd year, so there's a little bit, a higher level of anticipation a little bit. But 10 wins, not impossible. I think anything more than 10, you're really getting some magic. You're really getting some luck. I think even a 10-win season, there'd have to be a couple things go Michigan's way. For instance, let's say Ohio State or Penn State doesn't perform as well as everyone's projecting. And real quick, it's Joel Klatt. I was going to say Joel Klatt. I don't know why I said Clay Travis, but yeah, Joel Klatt really likes Michigan. I don't put it this way. I'd be more surprised if Michigan won 11 games than I would be if they won 8 games. That makes sense.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm on board with that, but
I know that's probably not popular. Everybody's like, "Boo, Biggers." What are you saying? That's realistic in me. I would not be as shocked as to see this team go 8-4 as I would be. I'd be pretty surprised to see these guys finish with 11 wins in the regular season. I really would.
I definitely think 9 to 10 is really. I think if you're going just from a percentage,
that's fair.
I think 9 to 10, those two options. You know how they always do the projections. It's like out of a million scenarios, here's where this many numbers on each win calculated out. I would bet like 70 to 80% of the scenarios would be 9 to 10 wins. That's really, to me, where it's going to center around. I think 8, 11, anything other than that is just minuscule in terms of the overall likelihood. But I for me, and this is the way I approach it, for our listeners who, obviously I write for SB Nation, so I'm a little bit biased towards them. And Bill Conley, who's the big advanced stats guy for SB Nation, he projects every team in the country, and he uses his mathematical formula, which you can disagree with, you can agree with, whatever. I like to use it as a baseline. And for me, if you look, these are the projections he has right now. He has Michigan as his number 10 team coming into the country, and they are favored in 9 games. They're underdogs against Penn State, Wisconsin, and Ohio State, which probably not that surprising. They're favored against Florida. So just starting off with, if they win every game they're favored in, which, obviously it can change. This is just a formula preseason, but that's 9 wins right there. And then you're talking about, at Penn State, at Wisconsin, and Ohio State. Michigan has a 40% chance or better in all 3 of those games, which may not sound the best, but realistically, that's basically a coin flip. And I would note as well, I think one thing a lot of people are forgetting about this year's schedule is the weak game, quote unquote, the weak opponents, the filler, so to speak. It's pretty bad this year. We're not talking about going on the road to Minnesota or going on the road to Iowa like last year. We're talking about a road game at Maryland. Rutgers at home.
Maryland might be a little bit tougher though. I like the Terps. I'm not saying that I think Michigan would win that game. I'm just saying in terms, I wouldn't totally overlook the Maryland game. Not right now. And I think
it's definitely a possible loss. The thing for me though is and again, I'm just using his percentages here just to give us kind of a guideline. And he has Michigan with 86% odds to win at Maryland.
Okay.
That's essentially a lock, generally speaking.
Definitely.
And the thing for me is versus the only one of these games, like I said, Michigan's favored in 9 games according to his numbers, and 8 of them, Michigan is a pretty significant favorite. And, the one exception being Florida, they have 55% odds. It's basically a coin flip again. But the only one of those 8 games where they're substantial favorites that they're even like under 80% is at Indiana, which with 73% odds. So, if you believe the odds, they win that game 3 or 4 times. So I mean, that's to me where I start. I think the floor is so high just because so many of these games, I don't want to call them easy, but again, like they're not going to lose to Purdue. They're not going to lose to Cincinnati. They're not going to lose these games. And so to me, I just look at that and it's like to win only 9 games, they're going to have to go 1-3 against Florida, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Ohio State, assuming they win all the other ones. And for me, it's just, I think they're better than Florida. I'm sure we're going to talk about this game in more detail either tonight or later this week. But
we will.
Yeah,
we will.
I think they're better than Florida. But even, Wisconsin, they have some question marks. Penn State, I know everyone's high on them. That's a tough road game.
I like Penn State, man. I like Penn State.
Yeah, but like for me, I guess like if you think Michigan beats Florida this week, which again we'll get to, but then it's really they have to lose all 3 of the other ones. They have to lose at Penn State, at Wisconsin, Ohio State, which they could. Don't get me wrong, but I have a hard time believing they're not going to win at least one of those if they do take down Florida. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But yeah, I mean, I think 9-10 is probably where realistically this team is sitting at an end to this year.
I agree 100% with the logic behind it because I think too, Florida's going to be a measuring stick game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at Wisconsin, Penn State on the road, Ohio State in Ann Arbor, but still it's Ohio State. And I say this every time, Michigan's beaten Ohio State 3 times since I graduated high school.
You don't need to bring that up.
And I was class of 2000, everybody, high school. I was class of 2000. So put that into perspective. Yes, last year Michigan had every opportunity to win that game. Do I think it's going to be – you know what? I don't even know what I think it's going to be yet because that is literally the last game of the regular season. Focusing on Florida, I do like Michigan in this one, Thomas, and I've been kind of teetering between a 27-20, 24-20, something in that range. And I think that's somewhere what I was a little bit initially like over the summer. I was like, I had questions. Can Michigan's offense score 3-4 touchdowns in this game? Or is this going to be one of those where it's got, a couple touchdowns and their defense buckles down and they get, 3 field goals, something like that. So I do think Michigan's offense can score 3 touchdowns in this game. I do think, tack on a couple field goals and again, and giving up 20 points to Florida, some people might be like, oh, Michigan's defense. There are questions in the secondary. I can see, regardless of who the quarterback is, whether it's Felipe Franks, Luke Del Rio, or Malik Zaire, they have 3 quarterbacks right now. No decision. I guess Jim McElwain, coach of the Gators, says that all 3 of them are going to play. I have to believe if I'm looking at, okay, what are some scenarios? Secondary is going to give up a big play. That's what I think, and that's probably going to lead to a touchdown. If it's not a touchdown, it's during a touchdown drive. And then, do I think Michigan could probably hold the Gators under 2 touchdowns? Maybe, but still, 20 points is score a couple touchdowns, get a couple field goals. I think that's doable for the Gators. I think I want to caution Michigan fans because I know everybody's so excited about this team, and there are reasons to be excited, but this isn't going to be. And I know with the bulletin board stuff with Jim McElwain, they're going to go to Dallas and beat the heck out of Michigan. I know Michigan fans want to see another Citrus Bowl win. Remember that 41-7, they just trounced the Gators. That's not going to happen. I don't believe that's going to happen. I do, like I said, I can completely see a 27-20 victory, 24-20. I think it is going to be a closer game. At the same time, we can predict scores and dissect what's going to happen, this, that, and the other. Bottom line is I think Michigan does win this game. And you win this game against Florida at AT&T Stadium. then we can start cranking up the gears and saying, okay, how confident are these guys going to be? And then what next? Get Air Force in Cincinnati. If these guys are riding high after a Florida win, then yeah, watch out. They're probably going to tear up Air Force in Cincinnati. That's my logic. And then they get out to a real hot start, 3-0, and they have some stats behind them. Wilton Spate's got, some passing yards and touchdowns to his credit. Chris Evans and Karan and Ty Isaac and Kareem Walker, they're running the ball well. Then we could start getting the wheels rolling like, okay, 10 wins or more. But I want to see these first few games, and obviously I want to see the Florida game. And I want all you guys to follow along. So I'm on Twitter at AdamBiggers81. I'll be in Dallas. I leave Wednesday. Going down with a couple good friends, Cody and Manny. We're on the same flight there and back. It's going to be a great time. Follow on FanRag Sports at FanRag_U. We'll have everything coverage-wise, live streams, player interviews, Harbaugh, written material, all that stuff. I'm sure Thomas and I will hook up for an episode as well. So I had to use that opportunity as a perfect segue, Thomas, to plug the Florida coverage. So I do have a couple notes real quick. Jordan Glasgow, backup Viper and a backup safety, he has been awarded a scholarship now. So congratulations to Jordan Glasgow. If you're watching the show, you know who the Glasgows are, Ryan and Graham, grinders, like no other. Those guys epitomize the word grinders. So Jordan worked his tail off. And speaking of a guy real quick, I want to bring up, Thomas, how much are fans talking about Nate Shanley? And it's Shanley. We had some clarification. It is Nate Shanley, not Shanley. This kid, I was really impressed with him. His demeanor, he's intelligent. I think he's pretty self-aware, and at the same time, he looks like the nice kid that lives a couple streets down from you that would help you shovel your driveway or something. You know what I mean? In a snowstorm. At the same time, this guy's running around. He's unassuming, very much. And I've used that word with Mo Hurst, but you could look at Mo Hurst and tell, okay, he's a football player. Nate Shanley, Shanley rather, there we go. If you saw this kid out in public, you might not even guess that he is really turning heads during practice. And he's hanging with 4 top 25 ranked receivers, true freshmen coming in. He was a walk-on last year, played against Hawaii, had a good spring game. Harbaugh's been mentioning him, teammates have been mentioning him. As a fan, Thomas, what are your expectations for a guy like Nate Shanley?
Well, I mean, I think he's certainly going to play. I think he's going to get a lot of snaps. I think, as far as what I'm expecting, he's going to have an uphill battle just as far as there's so much depth there. There's so much talent. I mean, I know there's question marks as far as, who can there be a lockdown number 1 type of guy, a lockdown number 2. But, I mean, there's just so many guys there. I mean, one of the guys I was actually talking about earlier this week with someone was Nate Johnson. I mean, you talk about a really nice receiver prospect coming in, and is he even going to play? I know they talked about moving him to the secondary, and
I think that's possible that he's going to. I can't confirm that, but I've heard some buzz. Yeah, I think that's possible that Nate Johnson's moved to the secondary. Yeah. And again, I mean, you mentioned depth right there, which at the same time though, look at Nate Johnson, and people thought he was a nice prospect, and now we're looking at a kid, Nate Shanley, who was a walk-on, could have gone to Hillsdale, Division II in Southern Michigan. He could have gone there and played on a scholarship. Instead, he came to Michigan, and worked his butt off. So, I mean, I think that kind of speaks volumes a little bit. I mean, Drake Harris is a defensive back. Nate Shanley is still a wide receiver option. Drake Harris came in as one of the best wide receivers in the country and one of the best shooting guards in the country.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, to me, that speaks volumes, for like a guy like Nate Johnson, because the thing is we haven't heard anything bad about him. We haven't heard that he's playing terribly or anything like that. It's just there's so many guys there that can play. And I think Shanley will get his opportunities. I think he's going to have to obviously fight for every snap, with all that depth, particularly if he is, trying to get a little bit in the slot role, maybe on the outside. Obviously, we'll see how they want to use him this year, but he's going to have to fight. And, you see, again, another one, we talked about Nate Johnson for a second, but, Nico Collins is a huge prospect too. And is he going to play that much? I mean, it's just there's so many different guys there. But yeah, I mean, you have to feel good about his story and how he's progressing, and certainly, you know, going back to Glasgow. I mean, talk about just a crazy. It looks like the Glasgows are kind of Michigan State's Bullas,
Right.
recreated a few miles over. So, but you know, it's always nice to see the walk-ons who earn their way, get the scholarships, and work their way in. But I did want to take a second though to jump back to what you're talking about as far as Florida is concerned. This is how I'm thinking of the game, and again, Michigan's just such a hard team to read at this moment. You know, as I said, I know I said 10 wins 5 seconds ago, but they're hard to read just because there's so many question marks. I mean, we're predicting certain things to go a certain way, but we haven't seen them, so we can't say for sure. But I think, to me, this game is far more likely to be if there's a blowout scenario, I think it's going to be Michigan blowing out Florida versus Florida blowing out Michigan. And the reason I say that is just I am not confident at all that Florida is going to be able to move the ball with any consistency. I agree with you. I think there's going to be a broken play or two. I think there's going to be like a 70-yard touchdown for Florida, something like that, where the secondary just gets screwed up. They give up a big play, but on a play for play basis, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball against that D line. I certainly don't have any confidence in their receivers, assuming that the suspensions stand and they don't, you know, reinstate anyone who they've announced was going to be suspended. And I don't know. I mean, if you don't have you're talking about playing 3 quarterbacks, which for the record, I think is just a gamesmanship thing.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Because I can't believe this late in camp, you're still down to 3 guys. I just have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, I don't buy into it, but you know, if they do that, or if there even is that much uncertainty, I have zero confidence at all. I mean, if you don't have a good quarterback against a competent defense, you're going to be in trouble. And so yeah, I mean, I just look at it like that, and it's like, I mean, 21 points, 3 touchdowns. I mean, will that be enough for Michigan to win the game? Like, I don't know, maybe. And to me, it's like, tough defense or not, that doesn't seem like a crazy high bar for Spate and those guys to clear.
Yeah, it's almost one of those things, you know, like any big game that we've discussed, and I think any big game from like a media perspective or a fan's perspective, it's almost like you talk about it and think about it so much, but really, what is the truth? What's the truth of it? What's the proof's in the pudding when they play the game? And that's why, I mean, this has to be. I mean, I'll say from my perspective, you know, professionally, this is the most anticipated season opener. I mean, the Utah game was pretty big. You know, I mean, that was huge because it was Harbaugh's first game going out to Utah. The Utes were a good team. You know, won that game. What was it, 24-17, I believe, something like that. 24-17, 20, yeah, 24-17.
Something like that.
That was a big game. But now, you know, okay, Harbaugh's been here for 2 full seasons. He's got his recruits in. He's, you know, the whole staff. We look at everything like that. And now, year 3, and I'm thinking, okay, they're going to Dallas to play the Florida Gators. This is serious. To me, from my perspective, this is a bigger opener than the one at Utah, than his coaching debut at Michigan. And I know from a fan perspective, or even there's probably counter arguments. I mean, there's always a counter argument to everything. You're a lawyer, Thomas, you know that. So
fair enough.
Hey, you know, and so yeah, I mean, you could say, well, the Harbaugh game, there's more anticipation for that because everybody. I mean, they did the khaki cam, right? Fox Sports, they did the khaki cam. Everything. They were really getting into this thing. At last year opener, okay, people were excited because it's Michigan football, and they came off a 10-win season and beat the pulp out of Florida in the Citrus Bowl. Pun intended. Get it? Pulp, citrus. All right, anyway. But it was Hawaii. And we saw what we thought we were going to see, right? Just a massive rout. But then we also saw guys like, you know, Chris Evans got to play. And I know people are really high on Chris this year. So, I mean, I think if you take in all things into account now, there's a strong case to say obviously Harbaugh's biggest season opener. This is possibly, because I think the Orange Bowl last year was one of his most important games. This might be one of his most important games so far that he's coached at Michigan. Would you agree? I mean, you have to agree with that, don't you?
Oh, it's certainly one of his biggest games that he's coached. I mean, just from the perspective, I mean, you start out with it's a ranked opponent. It's a ranked matchup. I mean, Michigan hasn't had a ton of those, and part of that's just been odd luck. On the way the schedule has broken out, and how some of the teams ended up being ranked. But yeah, I mean, you start with that, and it's a huge game. I think as far as anticipation and how big it goes is, I think you have to look at trying to compare it to the Utah game. I think is a little tough just because that was such a unique scenario.
Right.
With the coaching debut, I think I think that was a bigger game for things off the field. From an on-field perspective, this is undeniably the biggest opener since the last time they were in Jerry World. And I think you can make an argument that this one's bigger because anybody who really had how do I want to say this? Anybody who was realistic about that game knew Michigan was going to be a huge underdog.
Oh yeah, that was actually the first time I was brand new at Bleacher Report and covering Michigan football, but it wasn't like on a full-time basis. So I was at home for that, and I was just doing a live blog on the game. And yeah, that could have not gone any worse for the Wolverines. And I agree. If there's any Michigan fans who had any hopes, thoughts, or dreams that they were going to go to Dallas and beat the Crimson Tide, there was just no way. But this year is different. This year, it's not Alabama. It's Florida. Still a very good program. One of the best programs in the SEC. One of the most consistent in the country. You could probably argue that. I mean, Florida's got a lot of tradition. It's a big-time program.
Oh, sure.
You rank Michigan. This is an absolutely huge game. And I do believe that Michigan goes down there with some confidence. And like I said, I do believe the Wolverines win this game. The score and circumstances and all that stuff, we could dissect it. And, you could agree with me or disagree, and I could agree and disagree with you. And the same thing, with our listeners and readers and everything. But at the end of the day, I think everybody can agree on this is very much a winnable game for Michigan. And this is a game that I do believe Michigan wins.
Yeah, and I think another important thing, and when we're talking about the importance of the game and what it can mean at season's end, I mean, there are going to be a huge number of takeaways Sunday night, Sunday morning through the evening of next week, September 3rd. You're going to read about 20 articles about, this is what's going to happen this season. We already know now that we've seen these teams play a game, we know what's going to happen. I would be wary of that, think about a couple years ago when Ohio State lost to Virginia Tech.
Right.
The second week of the season, I believe there was a quote from Clay Travis, who you brought up earlier, saying the Big Ten was dead, eliminated from the playoff picture. Well, didn't turn out to be true. Ohio State ended up making it and winning the title. So don't get too carried away with season implications off the first week. You never know what's going to happen. However, I would note that, again, based on how Michigan's schedule looks, if they do lose this game, then I think, what you were saying about 9 wins, I think that becomes everyone's real expectation at that point. Just because you're talking about 3 difficult games remaining, 2 of those on the road and 1 against Ohio State, which I know Michigan fans don't want to hear this, but against a team that's going to be better than you. I mean, Michigan will really have to make some substantial progress if they're going to be, a truly better team on the field. They may win, but again, to me, it's one of those things like, if you look at like Purdue, Michigan is clearly a better team than them, whether it's on the road or not. Now, do they get tripped up? That's the question. But, when you face Ohio State, in all likelihood, they're going to be a quote unquote better team than you. So whether it's at home or not, it's an uphill battle. So I think when you look at that, suddenly you're thinking, okay, 9 wins, and you need 10 wins to make a New Year's Six Bowl at least, based on what we've seen so far, excluding some weird Big Ten championship scenario. So I think at that point, that's what really, to me, the Florida game means. It's going to impact either your playoff odds or your chances at a New Year's Six bowl. So it's an important game for that, but it'll be interesting. I don't know. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I guess before, like I said, I wanted end the show with Michigan State topic. There were a couple of notes that I wanted to mention real quick. As far as receivers go, let's not count out Kekoa Crawford as a top option.
Yeah.
Kekoa seemed pretty confident, and I asked him that question, and you guys could catch all those videos on my YouTube channel. I asked him, we have a lot of us think of him as a blocking receiver. I mean, I remember asking Jim Harbaugh the blocking question about Kekoa. And I think it's unfair to just peg him as that. He is a physical guy. Kekoa likes to mix it up. He's one of those guys that I think is a good physical receiver, and obviously with his like and ability to block, that helps. But at the same time, I think do look at him as a serious receiving threat. Do look at him as a top option. And he told me that they all think they can be that, and that's what you want in a wide receivers group, right? I don't think there's any perceived pecking order in the wide receiver group, except for the fact that internally every guy believes they're number one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good. That's good for competition. So, and then real quick, a report, Jake Rudock, Michigan fans who thought Jake Rudock sucked, and I laugh about that. It's like, geez, Jake Rudock only set the tone for Harbaugh era quarterbacks. Let's give Jake Rudock some respect and the credit that he deserves. About as a potential trade piece, the New England Patriots are interested in him. So if we want to get the really churning, some underrated quarterback out of Michigan ends up in New England, and then what happened to that? That I'm not saying he's gonna be Tom Brady, but I do like to take this opportunity. And if you're a Jake Rudock hater, or if you knocked Jake Rudock while he was at Michigan, and oh God, he's just this, he's just that. Jake Rudock basically put a team on his back in a lot of instances. It was a major piece to that 10-win season. So again, and I think if you ask Jim Harbaugh about Jake Rudock, he'd probably say something similar to, yeah, he was that bridge. Jake Rudock was the bridge. Jake Rudock was the guy. He taught Wilton Spade a lot, so on and so forth. So, yeah, good for Jake. He was drafted in the 6th round. So was that Brady guy, wasn't he?
Yeah,
hey.
I was going to add, I actually got a chance to go to the game on Friday night, which was a lot of fun.
Okay.
And I did want to bring up the fact Rudock looks solid. I still have some substantial doubts as to whether he can be a starting quarterback in the NFL or at least a competent one. But he has shown that he absolutely deserves his spot on an NFL roster. I think he's going to be around for years to come. And I don't say that because, again, I think he's some powerhouse quarterback, but he's a smart quarterback. He's going to learn the playbook. He's going to do his due diligence as far as it goes in the offseason, which I think will keep him on a roster. Coaches like that from their backup quarterbacks. They do not like drama from that in the NFL. And I think that will keep him on a roster and keep him moving forward. So I'll be interested to see if he gets moved. One other thing I did want to add, though, I know we talked briefly about the Lions on our last podcast together, but I think they're going to be in a little hot water this year. Personally, I think people got a reality check on Friday night. The Lions won their first 2 preseason games, and then I don't know if you got a chance to watch the game on Friday, but they were down 24-0 with Brady in the game, and once he went to the bench, just when they started closing it up, I mean, it was just the Patriots just tore apart that defense, and really the Lions offense had no consistency with Stafford on the field, when they were against the first team. I have some real doubts, and I wonder, for you, does this kind of change your thoughts as far as like this Stafford contract? Because everybody's talking about he could potentially be the highest paid player in the NFL here with his next contract. And I kind of wonder, if they have him at a quote unquote discount rate, which you can debate whether that's true. Certainly it would be true versus what his next contract would be. And they still are getting wrecked. does that change your view, I guess, as far as whether they should give him the big deal or not?
Truth be told, I don't really care enough about the Lions to give like
Fair
a
enough.
really informed opinion. I've never been in love with Matthew Stafford, but I've always looked at him, and when we see like peak level Matthew Stafford, I'm like, man, this guy can play with any quarterback in the NFL. When we see peak level Matthew Stafford, is that
All
worth?
15 minutes of the season.
I guess what is that worth for the Lions? Because when we see, you know, average Matthew Stafford or below average Matthew Stafford, then it's nothing special. I like Matthew Stafford for a lot of reasons, and most of it's not even really the way that he plays. I think that he's a classy player. I think that he embraces, the leadership role, that kind of thing. I think he's a great representative of the Detroit Lions, and I think that to me at least, from a casual Lions follower, I can't even probably name 15 guys on that team. But for me, I look at Matthew Stafford and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, Calvin's gone. Barry killed my soul. That killed my whole love for the Lions.
Yeah.
But at least there's Matthew Stafford. And yes, Matthew Stafford can be an elite quarterback in the NFL. I do think that. Do I think he's ever going to get there? Hell no, not in Detroit, man. It's just not going to happen. I want, and I know Lions fans are probably going to be mad at me. I think that we saw a lot of the best of Matthew Stafford with Calvin.
Yep.
That's just how I feel. I do have this just popped up on Twitter. This might kind of changing the topic a little bit, but this might be of interest to you, Thomas. If you think of, I don't know, give me 4 or 5 teams in college football that you feel like probably have the biggest following on social media. Who are the biggest programs in your eyes, that they have the furthest reach?
Furthest reach. I
in
guess
terms of in terms of followers.
In terms of followers, so like biggest fan base is what I'm taking this as.
Biggest fan base on social media, yes.
Social media. Well, I mean, I don't know how it compares social media versus just regular fans, so I'll just go with fans. But I'd say Michigan, Ohio State, I think are definitely in the top 5. I think Texas probably is. Florida State, I think, has a big following, and I think they're underrated by a lot of people. I'm trying to think of, let's see, that's what, 4. Obviously Alabama, I'd throw them in there as well, but I think yeah, I mean, to me it's pretty obvious probably who the biggest fan bases are, but that's where I'd go. I'd probably say.
In terms of fan base, with Texas, you're Florida State, you're absolutely correct. This one, though, it's on MVP Index, at MVP Index, and it says that Michigan leads all college football programs in total reach on social media with 2.5 million followers. So obviously there's more than 2.5 million Michigan fans in Metro Detroit. So
yeah,
or Southeast Michigan. So obviously it's not a true indicator of the size of the fan base, but in terms of being, followers, that Michigan has the most out of the top 4 according to MVP Index. And the second is Alabama at 2.4 million. Third is LSU at 2.1 million. Fourth is Ohio State at 1.4 million. And tied with Clemson, which has 1.4 million.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'm surprised Texas isn't in there though. Texas has Texas has a massive following. It's like Texas. If you think, Michigan football, there's a ton of loyal fans. Ohio State, ton of loyal fans. Texas Longhorns football is one of those like different breed kind of things. Those guys Texas fans are crazy. I think, and Alabama fans. I think football down south, basically, and I hate to generalize. I'm sorry if offending any of our viewers down south, but you guys are nuts about football to the point where it's more than just fandom. It is like you live and die. And I know there's Michigan fans like that, and there's that group in every fan base. But I think as a general rule, football down south, they're just way more fanatic.
I think
just way more fanatic about it.
I totally agree. I think generally they're much more hardcore. than the northern and western fans. But to me, the big reason, and obviously the people have probably written books about this, but I think the biggest reason for me is just like they don't have the same pro teams and like the diversity of teams within the states. And the thing is like I always tell people, I'm like, okay, if you're, say you live in Detroit, you probably root for at least 3 of the pro teams. You know, maybe you're one of the Lions haters, then don't follow them. But 3 or 4 of the pro teams, and then you probably have a college team as well. So the thing is like those fans, a lot of times, people who have that mindset, you know, we'll say the Red Wings get knocked out of the playoffs. It's like, oh, well, all right, we'll move on to the Tigers. Tigers get knocked out. Okay, well, I'll move on to Michigan. In the South, it's like, okay, you have LSU football.
Right.
That's it. If they don't win, like your year is over for sports.
Basically, and in Alabama too. I mean, you could debate that the Crimson Tide are a professional team. I know, whatever. Sorry, I had to do it. But yeah, Alabama football is huge down there for that reason. Auburn football is huge for that reason. I mean, even like, you know, state like Mississippi. I mean, Ole Miss and Mississippi State football are pretty popular too. So I mean, yeah, take that into consideration. I have a couple questions from Twitter. If you feel like getting on, we can chomp on those for a couple minutes before we get into the highly anticipated Michigan State
because of
preview.
Next opponent.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, did you throw that chomp in there for Michigan's next opponent, or?
Oh, hey, well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, we could chomp. You guys want me to do a Gator chomp? I wasn't gonna say anything too, and I just noticed, but I'll say it now. The shirt is blue and orange, and then there's blue and orange in my hat. It's not on purpose. And everybody razzes me about it because I always wear like a different hat or something and that kind of stuff. So, and I just did the Gator chomp. Sorry, I'm not trying to rile you guys up, but do have a couple questions from Twitter, so we'll get into those. And first one comes from Kevin Poor at KevDP21 on Twitter. Any updates on the defensive backs, projected starters there, and the overall health of the team? Great question, Kevin. We appreciate you for asking. And again, find us on Twitter at Mitten Sports MI. Tweet me at AdamBiggers81. Tweet Thomas at Beindit. We'll do our best to answer you guys' questions, get them on the show. Kevin, updates on the defensive backs. Well, I'm sure that you heard that Keith Washington transferred, and Keith was starting at corner for 3 weeks. And they moved him to a safety, just things. I did a solo podcast on this topic, so watch that if you want to know more about Keith Washington. But projected starters at corner, I'm going with David Long and Lavert Hill. Safeties, Tyree, Kinnel, and Josh Metellus. Watch out for Josh Metellus. I like this kid. Josh is he's going to be important. He and Khaleke Hudson, Tyree Kinnel, those guys are going to be huge. But watch big plays, big hits, the energy of the defense. I really think Josh and Khaleke are going to be guys that do that. So kind of expanding on that one. Brian Hall had a comment because now, Thomas, you heard the Mike Zordich comments, right?
As far as Lavert Hill and
the cornerbacks, and it was doomsday, right, in Ann Arbor. Zordich was waving his hands. And you guys watching the live stream, you can see it. If you're listening to the podcast, you can't. He was waving his hands. He said that he hoped the eclipse maybe changed because that was the day of the eclipse, right? He said he hoped the eclipse would maybe change something with these guys. And I mean, I don't think he went out of his way to dump on these guys. I think it was more from a motivational standpoint because I've talked to a bunch of other players, secondary, guys in the secondary. Josh Metellus said, hey, the corners had some problems. Yeah, they're growing, but they'll need, it takes time. He's confident in them. Tyree's confident in them. Khaleek's confident in them. Kekoa Crawford told me, and this is almost like a direct quote, the cornerbacks are straight. We're going to be for show. For show. That's what he said. He said they're going to be for show. Yeah. And he said it very confidently. Like, he just turned to me and was like, dude, why are you even – don't worry about it. The corners are going to be okay. That was the vibe I got from Kekoa, who was really loose, man. I like – you talk to Kekoa, he's a player I think that you just like personality-wise. And he's got that he's almost got that you know he's got the killer instinct kind of thing going for it. You can look at him and tell, you know, he's got that switch. Kako's got that switch. So that's why I said consider him as a top, maybe an option as a number one receiver. So back to Brian Hall's comment, because I get lost on topic sometimes. He said Zordich pretty much roasted everybody in that room besides Hill. I'd say they responded appropriately because Brian said he had heard that the corners had improved. And yes, according to what the players have told us, you know, the past couple practices, again, I don't think it was much as Mike Zordich going out of his way and saying, hey, man, these guys suck. Like everybody but Lavert Hill are garbage. That's not what he was saying. I think what he was doing, because he did mention, I want the players to read the articles. He wants those guys to see those quotes. Like,
yep,
not fast enough. How are they coming along? How's the progress? Not fast enough. He wants them to see those videos. So to answer that question, I don't think the defensive backs. One, I like the possibilities. I like Josh. I like Tyree. We'll see what David and Lavert can do on corners. I like Khalik. You throw Viper in there too. So, and let me see another question. What do you think, Thomas, about the secondary? Want to find this other question? Are you concerned?
I will say without a doubt, I think it's the biggest concern position group for me personally, just because, and we've talked about this a few times on here. I mean, I feel pretty good about the safeties. I think most people do, at least the starting two. The depth might be a little bit of a question mark there, but I think most people are pretty confident in the starting two safeties. But the corners, I mean, it sounds like Hill has absolutely locked down one spot, which is good. You know, theoretically, if he's sort of a notch above everyone there, then at least you have somebody you can put on the other team's best receiver. But the thing is not only do you need two, you need three, because you're going to have to play somebody when you go dime, when you get against some of these passing teams, you know, a la Penn State, you're going to have a third defensive back out there. And certainly it's going to be a huge, huge concern if anyone gets hurt, which, you know, obviously, hopefully no one does. But, you know, to survive 12 games with your starting four guys in the secondary, I mean, we saw it last year. I believe Lewis had to miss some time. Yeah. So, I mean, that is far easier said than done to survive an entire season without needing at least another guy to come in for a game. So to me, I'm concerned about it, but in the same token, yeah, I mean, they got players there. They've produced a lot of talent there. And the other thing I think Michigan fans should keep in mind a little bit, and maybe this is a optimistic approach, but, you know, it is late August, so we'll live in the optimism here. But I would say, how many quarterbacks are really going to challenge your secondary on the schedule? I mean, okay, Penn State will, Ohio State will.
I think Brian Lewerke might from Michigan State.
Maybe.
It depends what he's got in front of him, and we'll talk about that later. But I like Brian Lewerke.
Okay, we'll say maybe a third guy. And again, there's some questions as far as, you know, what kind of receivers he's going to have, what kind of a line he's going to have. But so maybe Lewerke. But I mean, Minnesota doesn't have a quarterback. Maryland doesn't have a quarterback. Rutgers certainly doesn't have a quarterback.
And that's gonna be an absolute crap show. Man, I can't wait for that. I can't wait for the Rutgers game. I really can't. That's just gonna be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. If you want to talk about a highly anticipated game, I cannot wait for Rutgers to get to Ann Arbor. I just can't.
That'll be
just
fun. So yeah,
God,
I'm gonna go through the schedule right here. Okay, you start with Florida. Apparently, again, we just talked about the fact that they don't even know who their quarterback is, allegedly, which we'll see if that's true. But I certainly, you would, if they're going to have a good quarterback, they would have at least locked down somebody by now. Cincinnati doesn't have a quarterback. Air Force is a spread, or not a spread team, but a option
triple
team.
Option.
Yeah, they don't really pass the ball. Purdue, again. I mean,
David Bluff, Purdue, I think he's okay. Decent.
Yeah, I mean, he had like 20 interceptions last year.
Yeah,
so, I mean, I think that speaks enough.
We mentioned Indiana's quarterback, Richard Legault. He had like 27 interceptions or something crazy. I'm serious. He had a ton.
Indiana still has a quarterback controversy, as far as I'm aware. At least it's earlier before the preseason. We mentioned Penn State will obviously be a challenge, which, by the way, that game is October 21st. So they're going to have like 7 weeks to work things out. Rutgers doesn't, Minnesota doesn't, Maryland doesn't, Wisconsin, their passing game is super, super inconsistent. And then you get back to Ohio State, which we don't, if they have last year's passing game, I don't even think that is a huge concern for the secondary. Now, we'll see if they do. That's a story for another podcast, I guess. But I think when you look on the schedule, barring a breakout, maybe that's where Lewerke comes in. You're really looking at, 2.5 major challenges for the secondary. And this is an optimistic, this is a glass half full type of look, approach here. But I think that does at least minimize some of the concern.
Do you have a couple more questions on Twitter? And actually, there's a couple in our live chat. I checked them out too. So Haiti Live Radio, who watches my solo streams all the time. Haiti Live, I'll get to yours. And Poe Giraffe, we'll get to yours as well. This one just came off Twitter, and it's from Sarah West at Sarah West 12. She's a longtime listener, follower, reader. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for the question. She wants to know, will Shane Morris start for Central Michigan? My quick, direct answer was he better. So without knowing anything, I can't even tell you if there's who else is the other quarterback at Central Michigan right now, Sarah. But yes, Shane Morris, he better start. A question off Twitter, wanted to get to Adam D. Bartolomeo wants to know, and Adam watches the show and reads all the time too. So thanks for the question, Adam. Any big injuries? Really quickly, no, none that I can confirm. If you guys watched the show the other day, Chris Bellis of theWolverine.com had posted on his message board that Luigi Villan had some kind of lower leg injury, and that it sounded like Mo Hurst banged up or knocked up his knee. I think banged up was the word he used. Hopefully his knee is not knocked up. But anyway, that was another bad joke. I'm sorry. I'm good at those. Anyway, not that I can confirm. In terms of big, I mean, if there's an injury to Mo Hurst, then that's big in any capacity, right? I mean, but as far as I know, Mo Hurst will play against Florida. That's the word that I'm hearing. Again, we'll probably be able to confirm or try to at least confirm tomorrow with Jim Harbaugh. Tomorrow's his first regular season press conference. So be sure, follow me on Twitter again, Adam Biggers81. Watch my YouTube stream channel, and we'll have Harbaugh and player interviews and all that stuff. Real quick before I get into the next question, a note, and I'm getting sidetracked here. Captains, Thomas, were announced today for Michigan. Mike McCray, Mason Cole, no big surprise there. This question comes from Ryan Reinhardt at Rylo, RYLOUGH. Of the many story-worthy offseason events, Rome, administrative changes, transfers, etc., which will affect this season the most? I don't think the transfers are really going to have a big impact on the way that this team looks. I do think, Keith Washington out of the secondary, I do think that's kind of a loss there. I mean, Keith was a pretty solid player. And again, there's a lot to this story too, so don't just say that he's a quitter. And, I've heard a lot of ignorant stuff from Michigan fans regarding Keith Washington. It couldn't be further from the truth, actually. I think the Rome trip really did galvanize these guys. And it's easy to say, and I can't wait to hear all the Rome questions tomorrow. And I know all the other Michigan media too. That's kind of a running joke. Who's going to ask a Rome question? I understand that there's, people aren't there that every day and they want to come and get like general stuff. But I swear, if I hear another Rome question, I'm just going to be like, oh my God. Google it. Yeah. And there's about 50,000 Jim Harbaugh quotes out there. Cite where you got it from. His answer doesn't change. But Ryan, I do think that the Rome trip really did bring these guys together. Let me see. I don't think there's any more.
I want to throw out one thing as far as the off-season stuff. I think the transfer of Asiasi will affect a little bit. He was slated as likely the starting tight end, but they're pretty deep at that position, so I think they'll be fine. But that's one that if you're a Michigan fan, you kind of probably grumble about just because he certainly looked like he was headed for big things.
Okay, and in our live chat on the Sports in the Mitten YouTube channel, Haiti Live Radio wanted to know, are we taking questions? Well, to answer your question, yeah, we can. A couple minutes here, we can do that. Ho Giraffe, late in the game against Florida, if a couple plays start to go south for Michigan, who steps up to make a play? Thomas, what do you think?
Are we talking offense, defense? I guess.
I mean, defense would be my first guess, is just as far as the game's going south. Who's going to make a play for Michigan? I think it's Michigan's defense stops the bleeding. Is what I think.
I think it would be the defense because I could see Michigan a scenario. And again, this game, it's so weird because both teams have so many unknowns that you can pretty much see any scenario playing out in some capacity. But I think if I'm looking at the defense as far as who's going to step up, obviously Hurst, obviously Gary, those are the guys who you're expecting them. They can get a big tackle, they can get a sack. And I think Devin Bush as well. I think he's going to have a crazy, my prediction, I think he's going to have a crazy sack number this year. So I could see him coming in, getting a big play. Maybe it's a sack and a forced fumble or something. So that's who I'd say on defense.
Okay, and I think that's all of them that we have right now. Again, guys, if you're watching the YouTube live stream, feel free to ask a question. Either Thomas or I will field that one for you. I'm trying to think. Let's get into this Michigan State preview. And real quick, and I know that most of it, everybody's probably turning off right now. They're like, oh, Michigan State talk. Okay, bye. But I do cover Michigan State football a little bit, and I do split time Michigan State basketball in the winter. So real quick, there's a lot of information. Graham Couch of the Lansing State Journal did a phenomenal job with this preview stuff. So I'm getting the information from Graham's work. And so obviously follow him if you want to know the more on Michigan State football. Graham's certainly a guy who knows what's going on over there. Real quick, I just want to go depth chart. And starting with special teams, it looks like place kicker is going to be Matt Coughlin, redshirt freshman. Punter is going to be Jake Hartbarger, one of the best punters in the country, I think. He's a junior. Cornerbacks, defensive backfield. At corner, Justin Lane and Josiah Scott. Justin is a redshirt freshman, or he's a sophomore rather. Josiah is a true freshman. At free safety, Kerry Willis, Jackson Lumen Christie guy, but I'm forgetting their name right now. Please don't hold it against me. He's a viewer, and he goes with Jackson Lumen Christie. I think it's who is that? He's one of the regulars too. I don't know. I'm sorry, but anyway, Kerry Willis, that their free safety. Grayson Miller at strong safety. Top reserves would be Josh Butler and Tyson Smith at corner, and Matt Morrissey and David Dowell as safeties. I'm just going to click out of these as I go. And again, this is all from Graham Couch on the Lansing State Journal. You can follow him at Graham. I believe it's at Graham Couch or Graham_Couch. Depth chart as far as the running backs go. LJ. I mean, yeah, there's no question. LJ Scott, to me, is still one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. I think that you could probably put LJ as one of the top 10 or 15 running backs. Let's go top 20. I think LJ Scott's certainly a top 20 running back in the country. I don't think there's any. I wouldn't even say top 15. And really, if Saquon Barkley wasn't at Penn State, I think there'd be a really strong argument to say that LJ is the best running back in the Big Ten. So top reserves, Gerald Holmes. He's a senior from my neck of the woods, Flint, Carmen, Ainsworth, and Madre London in there as well. So those are your top three Michigan State running backs. It appears in that order. Again, LJ, Gerald Holmes, Madre London. Offensive line, starting at left tackle, Cole Chewins. He went to Clarkston. That's where I graduated from. I remember talking to Cole. He could have played mid-major. They liked him at tight end, and here he is now. He's a Michigan State starting left tackle. David Beadle, left guard. That's another Clarkston Wolf. David, I know, had some interest from Illinois at one time. He's in there at left guard. So that left side of the line is a Clarkston line, which is kind of funny, Thomas, because Clarkston wears Michigan Wolverine helmets. Just for those who don't know. Center, Brian Allen. Brian's one of the best centers in the country. Right guard, Tyler Higbee. Right tackle, Luke Campbell. And for the sake of time, I won't go into the depth for those ones. Just going with the starters. At linebacker, star linebacker, Andrew, and they use star, I'm not saying like he's their star linebacker. The position's called star. Star linebacker, Andrew Dowell. Mike is Joe Bacci. Sam is Chris Fry. Chris Fry is one of the captains. Top reserve is going to be in there. Tyreek Thompson, Shane Jones, Byron Bulla. I'm really wondering about Antoine Simmons, though. He's an Ann Arbor kid at Michigan State. Really good linebacker. I'm wondering, I think the linebackers are going to be huge for the Spartans this year. I really do. I think Bacci and Chris Fry are going to be, Chris Fry especially. I think Chris is like one of those emotional leader kind of guys. So, and then of course Tyreek Thompson. We had Tyreek on the show years ago when he was a recruit. And there's Shane Jones, Greg Jones' younger brother, and Byron Bulla, and everybody knows the Bullas. So I'm almost done, Michigan fans. I know this is really, Thomas is over there like, God, Michigan State football, what are we talking about? Starters defensive line looks like on the defensive end, Demetrius Cooper, defensive tackle Raekwon Williams, defensive tackle Mike Panasiuk, defensive end Kenny Willekes. I believe that's how he says it. Their depth at end would go Brandon Randall, Robert Bowers, Dylan Alexander. Wide receivers, Tristan Jackson, Belton Davis, Daryl Stewart. Tight end, Matt Sokol. Top reserves would be Cam Chambers, Hunter Rising, Cody White, Noah Davis. And I know that Michigan State really liked, Chambers came in. Everybody was talking about Donnie Corley, which will be a huge loss, but Cam was also a receiver that I know that Mark D'Antonio really liked. Hunter Rising, the younger son, or the son rather, of Andre Rising, former Michigan State star. And I know that I remember speaking with Kyle Austin of MLive. He does a great job covering the Spartans, and he was telling me a little bit, pay attention to Cody White. You know, Cody White might be a guy who gets in there and get some good snaps on offense. So that was Michigan State's depth chart in a nutshell. If you guys have any other questions, feel free. If not tonight, definitely in our future live streams. You can follow me on Twitter at AdamBiggers81. Just posted a feature or column rather on Nate Shanley. Check that out. Walk-on story. Really impressed by Nate. I like Nate. Those kind of guys, Thomas, are the kind of guys I think that make. I know the big scholarship football players make college football go round, but damn, you can't beat a good walk-on story. Nate Shanley really has that. So good for him. And find the podcast on Facebook. Like us on Facebook, Sports in the Mitten. Look for us on Google Play and iTunes, Sports in the Mitten, SITM. And again, we're on Blog Talk Radio, the FanRag Sports channel on Blog Talk Radio, and we're on YouTube. So I want to thank everybody for watching. That's me for the night. Thomas, do you have any departing remarks for the listeners, readers, followers?
I think that's about all I got. I was excited to watch the college football games yesterday, and it's nice that college football's back. So let's go.
Can't wait. College football's here. You guys, we want to know. This show is all about discussion with you guys 99% of the time. Let us know your thoughts again at Mitten Sports MI. Anything Michigan State related. Actually, real quick, let's close it with Floyd. 30 seconds on Floyd. Not surprised. He's from Grand Rapids, so of course, you know, he's from our state. We're going to talk about him. 50-0. I'm not surprised that he beat Connor. I think for the first 4, 5 rounds, even. I thought Connor was aggressive. You have to tip your cap to him. I think that, but he's not a boxer. And I was trying to tell everybody this. It's like when Floyd gets to boxing, then it's over. Floyd screwed around with him for 6 rounds. They had to stop the fight in the 10th. And people were like, oh, well, it was an early stoppage. Connor wanted to be more done. No, Floyd was knocking Connor silly. Okay? That needed to be stopped. Once Floyd started boxing, and the speed of his hands really came out. And I don't think that was one of Floyd's better performances. I think that he even said it himself. He gave people what they wanted. It was a performance, put it that way. But I don't think it was one of Floyd's finer, like technical-wise. I don't think it was one of his finer showing. Entertainment-wise, yeah, he went out there. He got Connor worn down. Used the speed. Boom, boom, boom. No surprise to me. So, that's basically my thought on Floyd versus Connor.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously like there's a reason he came in as a substantial favorite. Like
Yeah,
everybody's
substantial
reacting
to say the
now. Like,
least.
yeah, I love everybody's reacting now as if he wasn't like a massive, massive favorite going into the fight. We all knew he was the favorite. I mean, to point it out, it's like I was telling people this all week. I was like, yeah, you go into this fight knowing that like this is like Rich Rod's Michigan team against Ohio State. Like you're like, well, I don't know, maybe. Like we'll see what happens. But
Maybe a puncher's chance. No.
yeah, yeah, but they're probably gonna lose, but we'll see what happens. I thought McGregor fought really well for the first 4 rounds or so, but it was clear he was gassed. Once the 5th and 6th hit, it was clear that he was over his head. He wasn't going to be able to hold up. Once his hands started coming down, and then it was just you're not going to beat a boxer of that quality if you're not at least in good shape, so to speak. Not to say that he's in bad shape, but his conditioning wore down. It was obvious, and once that happened, he just Floyd toyed with him for a couple rounds and then put him out of his misery.
Again, and also too, and let's not forget. I mean, it's 2 different disciplines. I mean, we put Floyd against Conor in an MMA setting. It's no contest.
Oh,
No contest.
15 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, in an MMA setting, Conor would rip Floyd apart. But in Floyd's world, we're not talking the octagon. We're talking a 4-sided ring. That's Floyd's world. Conor had nothing. It was a win-win for Conor. He goes in there and he wins. Holy crap, MMA fighter, boom, and it's a huge blow to boxing. Like Conor McGregor is now a sports myth, right, or a legend, based on this alone. He goes in there and loses. Okay, he was an MMA fighter. Floyd was 49-0, massive favorite. So, like I said, I don't think there's any. If I'm Conor McGregor, I'm rich from this fight. My next 5 generations are taken care of from this fight alone, and I didn't really get hurt. Floyd did get at him a little bit, but I feel like he landed a couple punches on Floyd. At the end of the day, Conor McGregor lost this fight, but he didn't lose. He's not a loser in this situation in any shape or form.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and like act like I'm not a believer in the old like moral victory in this case. Like if you talk smack for 2.5 months,
oh yeah,
you don't.
And that's what Conor runs his mouth. I don't like Conor. I don't like Floyd. I'm not an MMA fan. I do like boxing. Both these guys were massive trash talkers. Of course, yeah.
The thing for me though is like I was talking to someone about this morning. I was like, I think people forgot a little bit too that like you took a guy out of MMA and we all know like he was known as a striker. He was known as a guy who could stand up and box, but that was his pro boxing debut. And you put him against a dude who was 49-0. I get that Floyd Mayweather was past his prime, but from a pure like competitive standpoint, like it would have been a much better fight had they put him against, the 10th best guy, so to speak. And I'm just using, a general term here, but starting him out with a little easier of a challenge than, Mayweather, it wouldn't have gotten nearly the attention it did. But it was a very, very challenging situation for him. It was an uphill battle, and he doesn't get to claim a moral victory because, as I recall, he called a knockout for him in 4 rounds.
Okay.
So
I'll give you that.
But I will say, I thought, he did about as well as you could have hoped for. I think realistically, if you understand the fundamental differences there.
Well, guys, we are out of questions. I'll have some live streams this week. Again, Jim Harbaugh's first official press conference of the 2017 football season is tomorrow. We'll get some players as well. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at AdamBiggers81 for all the latest updates. Follow FanRag Sports at FanRagU and at FanRag Sports, or FanRag_U rather, and at FanRag Sports. Follow the podcast at Mitten Sports MI, and you can also follow Thomas on Twitter because he's going to tell you how.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Beindit. You can follow my site at BT Powerhouse. Have a super exciting season preview for Big Ten basketball. That announcement coming in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that.
Can't wait. Yeah, again, I say this all the time. All you college hoops junkies out there, I know football season. Thomas never sleeps when it comes to college basketball. So if you are a hoops junkie, check out BT Powerhouse. Thomas always cranking out Big Ten basketball coverage. So, hey, great episode tonight, Thomas. Appreciate the chat. Thanks again to everybody who watched and listened out there. I'm Adam. He's Thomas. We're Sports in the Mitten. We'll catch you guys next time.